You've been watching sights and sounds from October 1st, 2017, the Harvest 91 festival where 58 people, innocent people, were enjoying a Jason Aldean concert, gunned down, killed, 600 others injured. But there are a lot of questions that still remain about that massacre just about a year ago. Lots of questions. What do we know about the motive? We don't know. What do we know? Why are there so many mysteries surrounding this shooter still unanswered? What's the real story behind the Mandalay Bay and what their involvement was, if any? The shooter had a camera set up on a room service cart. Remember that? The camera was set up down the hallway. We've never seen that video footage. I want to know what that looks like. Based on that audio that you heard, and that was actual audio from that night, you heard the pop, 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 pop. 1,100 rounds went into that audience. 1,100 in a 10-minute span with reloading. How does one man do that? Paddock, the shooter, made phone calls. Did he use the internet at the time? Do we know anything about what he was doing at that time? When did he kill himself? Did he kill himself? And how does one man, again, I'll say it again, how does one man get off 1,100 rounds by himself, killing 58 people, injuring another 500 or 600? We're going to take a deep dive into all those questions, see if we can answer as many as we possibly can in 1 hour's time. This is a special surrounding the Mandalay Bay massacre, October 1st, 2017. With me, joining me today on set, Randy Sutton. He's a former lieutenant, Las Vegas Metro Police. He is also a radio host. To my screen right to my left, Jim Breslo. He's the host of the Hidden Truth Show. He's investigated this event many, many times. He's going to talk to us about what he's learned. And we're bringing back Kaya Jones, recording artist. And if you notice that first video we played, God Bless America, that was Kaya herself taking that video. Kaya, just take us back to that night very quickly.
It's just so intense to see the footage that we were just listening to with the shots, because when I entered the concert venue, that's how I entered. I entered through that way and then got my passes and, of course, went backstage. So it just is eerie. It's very eerie.
Jim, what do you recall from that night?
Well, I was supposed to have been there. I had planned to go there. It was in my calendar to go. I'm actually a big country music fan myself, and it's really what kind of created my interest to dig into this deeper, including the fact that, you know, we just can't figure out what this guy's motive was. But all I can think of was that, thank God I wasn't there. And having interviewed so many people that were there, I was thinking that, you know, the chances of me getting hit, very low, right? But I just knew, I could feel that that would not be something that you want to ever experience in your life. And I know you went through that and you know that, but everyone I've spoken to who was there, it's something that just hasn't left them. I mean, so many are dealing with it, whether they were injured or not, they're dealing with the psychological fallout.
Sure, go ahead, Randy, your thoughts of that night.
This is a very vivid memory for me. I was home when I got a call saying that there was a coordinated terrorist attack on multiple hotels, and to get to the television station where I'm a commentator about crime and safety issues. And I can tell you that my blood ran cold, because this is something that we planned for as a police agency for years.
Mm-hmm. You planned for it, but you never expect to have to put those plans into
Correct.
play. So we sat down with Mayor Goodman, Carolyn Goodman. She's the mayor. She was the mayor at the time as well. And I asked her about some of the questions that we still have. One shooter, two shooters, conspiracy theory perhaps, maybe someone else was involved. How does one man get off 1,100 rounds? So I asked her, judge for yourself if she gave us any answers at all. Take a listen. All right, Randy, retired law enforcement, you heard Mayor Goodman say that's it. She believes that it's a one shooter. That's the theory that law enforcement is going with right now. And where do you stand on it?
You know, at first I was wondering the same thing. There were so many rumors going around. There was so much talk. It almost seems impossible that one human being could inflict such carnage in such a short period of time. But I have to go along with what the police investigation has come up with.
Do you know if the police, and I know that what they told us, the common people out here, is that the guns were legal, and
Right.
but they were fitted with bump stocks.
Right.
How do you get 1,100 rounds off in 10 minutes, reload, and still get 1,100 off even with the bump stock? Was that a bump stock to you? You were for law enforcement. Or did that sound like an automatic weapon?
When I first heard it, I thought it was an automatic weapon. apparently, and I was not even familiar with bump stocks until this incident took
So
place.
you believe everything that the law enforcement is telling us in Las Vegas happened the way they see it?
I do. I think it would be impossible for a conspiracy to take place and for it to be kept so silent and so secret.
Okay.
Because when you have more than one person involved.
Let me bring it to Jim. Jim, where are the answers? Where's that video? Where's the video of shoot down the hallway that the shooter set up to see people approaching him? Why don't we have all that information? Why can't we see the guns that were used?
Yeah, I think a disappointing part of this has been the candor and what's been released by the police, that it has been so slow. I think Sheriff Lombardo kind of, for lack of a better term, stepped it in a little bit on his first few press conferences, and I think after that, he really went inward and he locked down, and suddenly no information was going out. They made some big mistakes on the timeline, on description of how he died and so on, and from that point forward, we weren't getting information, and they had to go to court to get the information. I think some of the stuff you're referring to is probably in the FBI's hands right now. They've got his cell phones, they've got the computers, they've probably got the video that you're talking about. It's my understanding that Las Vegas police gave control of that to FBI. They're doing the behavioral analysis to try to determine what exactly was the motive behind this. So we have to wait until the end of the year to get that.
End of the year, end of 1 year period, is that what you're saying?
Well, FBI originally said they thought that they would release their review by the 1 year anniversary.
Okay.
They revised that now. Now it's at the end of this year,
End of
calendar
the calendar year. Kaya, we were all out on the town the last few days with some friends,
Yeah.
and almost unanimously, people on the street, people who work here, people who live here say what?
That they don't believe that it was one shooter. And that's a unanimous. That's my doorman. That's my valet at my place. That's a bartender last night at Lavo. I mean, it doesn't end. And that to me says the conspiracy theory is that it was one guy. You know?
You flipped the script. The conspiracy theory almost, I'll be honest with you, if you talk to people on the street in Las Vegas, they believe more than one, almost turning it into the conspiracy is only one shooter.
I have had the same conversation. There is a feeling throughout this community that it's impossible for one person to do this. Now, here's where I totally agree with what was said earlier about this. The information that came out and the way that it came out was not done in a way that would give confidence about the
Let me
final.
do this, guys. Let's roll in this. It's 2:22. It's police body cam in shooter's room. Take a look at this, and let's see if we can glean any information from what we see right here. Go. Okay, so this is the first time you see inside the shooter's Paddock's room. You hear that Paddock is already dead. They feel he's been dead for a while. Remember, this took a little while for the cops to get up there to enter the room. He mentioned something if you listen very closely, he mentioned something. He said, well, what about all those 911 calls? So let's hear a couple of 911 calls. Sot, one.
Landline with another security officer saying that there's 3 shooters confirmed on the 32nd floor.
On the 30th floor?
32nd, 32.
Okay. They say, security say they have possible 3 shooters on the 32nd floor.
Okay, Randy.
I don't know where they got that information. I mean, where they got 3 shooters from. The chances are, because it was happening in such a rapid sequence, and the number of shots, and the fact there were different rifles being fired, or different weapons being fired, because he had them set up, it would sound like there were different shooters because they're different weapons. That's a highly unusual set of circumstances.
I'll give you that because I want to go to Jim Breslo's package right now. Jim and I stood on the corner, literally on the corner of where the stage was. I was 5 feet from where the stage was. We turned around, we looked up at Mandalay Bay, the hotel. Again, it's not close, 400 or 500 yards. So this shooter or shooters had to do a lot of homework on the trajectory of the way these shots were being fired. Take a listen.
You know, what everybody wants to figure out is what was his motive. That was our primary thing. It was just unbelievable to me that we could have been 3 months out of the shooting and not know why this guy did what he did. And here we are now, about 10 months out. and people are still wondering why did he do this and what's behind it. So you've got a police report that's come out, the final police report. They say that it was a single shooter. They don't know what his motive was. You have the FBI also saying single shooter. FBI, though, does say that they think they are going to determine his motive, and we're going to know about it before the end of the year.
So we're only about 4 or 5 days from a 1-year anniversary of this massacre. You also said you heard that there was some security or some law enforcement in the hotel close to the shooter at the time.
This is not as public knowledge as it should be, because when the timelines first came out, they were basically wrong, and Sheriff Lombardo had them wrong, and it was very embarrassing for them, and he had to correct them. And then people were asking for various information. They wanted the reports, they wanted the body cam, they wanted to know really what happened. He stalled putting that information out. The media had to go to the courts to get that information out. Finally, the court said, Lombardo, you have to release this. He slow plays the release, but finally, after his election, we learned for the first time that there was 2 Las Vegas police officers on the 31st floor listening to shooting 1 floor above for at least 4 minutes. So they were already in the Mandalay Bay.
Why didn't they go?
The officer flat out says that he froze. Officer Varson says that he froze. Officer Hendricks said that he froze. Varson was a trainee that was with him, but he puts right in his report that he froze. And it's sad to see. You can see it with the body cam. You see exactly what happens. I would have frozen that situation, but now I'm not a Vegas police officer who's taken an oath to protect and defend.
So we've been here the better part of a week, maybe 5 or 6 days, and we keep hearing this more than one shooter, multiple shooters, reports of multiple shooters, some audio tape of 911 calls, multiple shooters. What do you know? What have you heard?
Everyone I've spoken to that was at the concert, and we've spoken to a lot of people that at the concert, they all say multiple shooters.
Why? What?
Well, the theory would be that there's shots echoing. That, first of all, he fired so many rounds in such a short period
1,100
of time,
rounds in
a
7 or 8
10-minute
minutes,
period.
yeah.
So I think people's first reaction is, this sounds like a lot. It's echoing off buildings, so that's sounding like it and everything. It didn't dawn on anybody that somebody could be up there doing this. Everyone I've spoken to that was there thought the shots were coming from ground
Let's
level.
do the math right here. About a 10-minute shooting spree, right? 1,100 rounds. You're talking 110 rounds per minute. That's almost 1.5. That's almost 2 shots per second. What gun fires 2 shots per second for 10 minutes straight without loading? I mean, if you encompass loading time, you could be 2 or 3 shots per second. Is that possible?
Well, the experts say that they think that it is, but I think that's still yet to be borne out. We do know that he had 22 rifles in the room, all set up with the bump stock, so he was ready to go. So when this one's done, he's ready to go to the next one. A lot of people will question, what is he doing with 22 rifles in the room? A lone shooter with 22 rifles? The theory would be, though, he wanted to be ready. If any of those jammed, he had the next one and the next one. The other little theory that I would put out there is he wanted to go out in what I call an orgasm of violence. That's what this was. And this guy was a sick individual in many different ways.
Tell us about his history that gives you that impression.
Child pornography is found on his computer. We don't know what that was doing there. We don't know what that's all about. Was he trafficking in child pornography? Was he consuming it himself? The brother, who I exclusively interviewed, also was found with child pornography on his computer in Los Angeles and faced charges for that. So there's something weird going on there. If you look at the father situation, FBI's most wanted list, known
The shooter's
psychopath.
father.
The shooter's father. He left the family when they were all young, so they're raised without a father. The brother tells a story about when he got to meet the father for the first time when he was 20 years old.
Okay, so if I'm understanding you correctly, you're ascribing to the single shooter theory,
Yes.
even though 1,100 rounds in 10 minutes. Okay, was Mandalay Bay negligent allowing one guy to bring 22 firearms up there, more than 2,000 rounds I think he had ready to go?
Look, I don't like the idea of holding anybody responsible, but the piece of you-know-what who did this, okay? But under the court of law and liability and negligence and so on, I'm going to say I think the answer is yes, that they were negligent. And the reason is we're looking from where he was to this location, and Mandalay Bay was, yeah?
Oh, tell me about that. They knew this concert was going on because?
MGM Grand was the co-promoter of this along with Live Nation. So MGM owns Mandalay Bay. They know 20,000 people are going to be across the street from their properties, Luxor and Mandalay Bay. What additional security did you put in place knowing or thinking about this? They had security here, but what about the security there? I think we're going to learn that there was no additional security there.
So Jim, you seem to call out Sheriff Lombardo a bit, saying there maybe have been things that he could have done differently, but yet you take his word for everything about being a single shooter and everything we learn about whether we have a lot or little information as far as motive.
Well, it's not just his word. It is the FBI has also come out and said the same thing, that it's single shooter. The FBI has not said conclusively what the motive is. They still think that they are going to determine a motive. That's what Rouse, who's in charge of the investigation, is saying. But they're saying no to terrorism and that it was a single shooter.
What are your thoughts, Kaya?
I don't know. I want to hear their report at the end of the year. I mean, it's very odd. The whole thing is very eerie still, and I don't feel that, it's just cut and dry like that. I really don't. I think you're an investigator. You investigated for many years. Is it always the easiest answer?
Do you know if they analyze forensically the trajectory of the bullets going into the ground and into, frankly, the people as well? Were they all coming from that one window? Or two windows that were broken in that one room?
I would seriously assume that the FBI did that.
But Randy, why are we assuming?
Well,
why
because we have,
as we're at a table here trying to find out what really happened,
right.
And we're not reading something that says, look, we found 1,100 bullets, or we found 900 of the 1,100 bullets. By the way, 600 people, 200 were shot, another 400 hurt. We know exactly the trajectory of those bullets, right?
Right.
So why don't we know this for a fact? Why is there no law enforcement agency that says, look, there are no bullets coming from the MGM, there are no bullets coming from the airport, these are all coming from one direction?
And that would be a question, that would be a direct question that should be addressed, but I don't know that it's even been asked in a public forum. But the reality is, this is a murder-suicide.
The crime shows, the crime shows where there's a victim, and then they put a stick into the bullet hole in the direction it came from,
Yeah.
and you can always find out who was the real shooter.
Forensic psychology.
Why don't they have 1,100 of those in that area? 58 people died. There's got to be resources to pay people to go find out the direction of every one of those bullets. Some of them are going to bounce off of something, but am I wrong?
No, there's no doubt that forensic analysis was done. We just haven't seen the reports of that, and that would be highly technical stuff that would not normally come out, but would be, if you ask that direct question, that is something that the scientists should be
Boy, I got to
familiar
tell you
with.
guys, and the reason for this show was to come to Vegas and try and really discuss, interview professionals, experts, and we had a couple others, and the mayor. We couldn't get Sheriff Lombardo, he didn't want to come on. And find out why those questions we have aren't being answered.
Well, I
don't want to
tell
wait
you
till
one of the questions.
December 31st when they may say, we'll give it another year. I want to know now. Do you want to know what? Tell me what.
Well, there was something that shocked me about this investigation that still is very, I have a true issue with, and that is that the homicide unit of the Metropolitan Police Department, whose sole responsibility is to investigate murders, were taken off this case.
By whom?
What?
Oh yeah.
By whom?
By the sheriff. He's the one that called the shots. The homicide unit of this police department, the Metropolitan Police Department, is one of the finest in the country. They were relieved of the responsibility, and it was given to a small unit called the FIT team. And this was something that happened.
FIT stands for?
The Force Investigation Team. And what they do is they investigate officer-involved shootings. Mm-hmm. Why the homicide unit?
How many people are in the FIT team?
I'm not sure, about somewhere around 10. And
okay, how many souls would be in the homicide unit?
Somewhere around 30.
So they cut the available bodies by 2/3.
When there's this many people shot.
It was truly one of the most shocking things, and also
My jaw's on the floor. I can't.
one of the most upsetting things to those detectives in the homicide bureau.
I can't imagine, because this is their city, as it's yours, as it's mine.
Right.
So for them that serve, that's a disgrace.
Jump in here.
Well, the theory is that Lombardo had a closer control over that FIT team than he had over the homicide unit. And he wanted to keep it, keep it very close
why
to the
wouldn't
vest.
Las Vegas, why wouldn't Carolyn Goodman say, hey, Sheriff, you work for me, I want the FIT team, I want those 10. and I want the other 30 in the homicide
'Cause I
team.
think
I
she
want
follows
40. I
protocol.
want, you know what? We'll bring in 10 more or 20 more. We'll bring in the state, to bring in some troopers.
I think she follows protocol. You saw how she spoke. I mean, she is a lovely woman. I've known her since I was a child, and I don't think that she steps into arenas that aren't hers. I think she follows protocol, and
You know what
she
we haven't
trusted
talked
her
about?
sheriff.
I agree.
And
I
I'm
think
bringing
she
this up,
trusts her
and
sheriff.
I'm not being a conspiracy theorist whatsoever at all here. No one's really talked about this at this table. Paddock, was he a trained shooter? Did he love to shoot? Did he love gun? Tell me, what's his history like?
Well, he was known for getting involved in things and getting very, very intense about it, pursuing it, and then dropping it. He was into skydiving at one point. He was
Stay
a
with the
pilot.
guns. Stay with me on guns, because this is my point here.
Well, my point is
Yeah.
that I do believe he dove headfirst into guns. This became a fascination of his. In interviewing his brother, he said he spent lots of time at the gun ranges. He said something very interesting, that this is not the first time that he had brought guns up into the rooms at Mandalay Bay. He would like to go to Vegas, and he would go to the shooting ranges. He'd bring his guns, and naturally he'd bring them up the elevator with him. If anybody ever stopped him,
22 of them?
Remember, probably not that, but if he'd ever been stopped, he's a VIP there. He would just say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I had taken him to the range, and I was going to take him up to my room to clean." He
Doesn't
would have a
shock me.
very
Doesn't
simple
shock me one
explanation.
bit that you
Right.
could bring that amount of firepower, that amount of ammunition over time. You make 20, 30 runs up there in a golf bag. It looks like you're carrying golf clubs. I get it. I don't put that on Mandalay Bay at all. My point is, I want to know more about this guy's history. Kaya, why don't we know more about it?
Good question.
Good
I mean, I
question,
think
right.
that's why we're doing this. And that's why you're here.
Let's go to this. Let's go to Kaya's package. Kaya and I stood out there also, the same spot, about 400 or 500 yards from Mandalay Bay, a couple of feet from the stage. Kaya took that cell phone video of God Bless America an hour prior to the shooting starts. Listen to this. Take a listen. Okay, a little interesting nugget you threw in there at the very end. For a guy who knows he's going to end up dead, do you pay off your marker? Do you do these things right before you
No.
perpetrate death on people?
No, but then again, I don't have that temperament to ever think of doing such carnage or evil. So we don't know. You know, that's the whole thing, is we have to have faith that we will find the answers and the truth will come out. But it's alarming when, you know, you were talking about what you were saying in the homicide unit being removed from this. That to me that's very alarming, and that is concerning.
We've spent the better part of an hour here talking about this. What do you think?
Narcissistic loner with a very, very poor upbringing, a father who was a diagnosed psychopath on the FBI's most wanted list, a son who's trying to perhaps outdo his father. Suddenly everything is crumbling for him. He's trying to beat the bank like his father used to rob banks, and he starts losing, and he starts losing big. Maybe he pays off the marker because he's a narcissist. He wants to demonstrate to everybody that, hey, I wasn't doing this because of debts. I didn't owe money, but police have determined that he lost about $1.5 million over the year prior to this. And I think there could have been some Alzheimer onset. There was an autopsy of the brain, no brain tumor found, but there was some calcium deposits found that was highly unusual that they don't really know what that causes. But I think you've got mental illness, and I think you have a very poor upbringing.
And law enforcement, what do we learn? What did they learn? Did you think they learned anything from this? And God forbid it happens again, would they treat it differently?
You know, this is one of those events that will be studied for years. This will be a study by law enforcement, by federal law enforcement. It will be autopsied, if you will, if you'll excuse that expression. But it's vital that that happens, because this is going to happen again in some shape or form. Because as long as there are people like Paddock, the deranged individuals who are capable of this type of violence, there will be someone that wants to outdo them.
Kaya, you had mentioned, I think you went to a concert recently and you found yourself looking at windows, worried about
Oh yeah.
any questions. Do I need to find cover if I have? Not a bad idea, by the way, if you start hearing things, have your escape route when you go to these concerts. I want to throw to one more package. This is police body cams near the concert. I want you to get another feel for the sights and the sounds of that day, October 1st, 2017. Wow.
Yeah, wow, it's right.
Wow. Think about that for a minute. We want to say thank you to our good friends Randy Sutton, Jim Breslo, and Kai Jones. As always, great to have you on set, and we'd love to continue to get you on set. And we want to say thank you to Las Vegas. You've been a great host to us. America, the show loves you, and America, the country loves you as well. We're going to leave you with this.